Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Iron Bark Podcast, and I am your host, Epyon. Just going to share some quick updates with you about the podcast. So, we're now on the X platform, formerly known as Twitter, after Elon Musk has purchased it. It's been going good on there so far. Don't have as large as a following as I do on other platforms yet, but it's building slowly but surely. And there's been some cool things that have happened on there. One, I've become monetized, and that happened on the anniversary of Elon Musk purchasing the platform, which is pretty cool. Subscriptions are still not active on there, and that's been pending for months. There is also a tipping button function, which I wouldn't really, I don't think I've ever experienced anyone use that. I've never used it myself. The tipping thing is a weird thing. Anyway, it's a pretty neat platform. It's really cool what they're doing to help creators on there. We now have live streaming. Purchased some equipment to hopefully start doing live streams on there. I'll probably end up doing exclusive content on there once subscriptions go live. So that will likely be in the form of it'll be like a podcast sort of like what I'm doing here, but much different, probably much more focused on the X platform itself, as I do have a pretty heavy interest in like X, Tesla, SpaceX, all that kind of stuff, aside from nature and wildlife. Um, but anyway, yeah, it's pretty cool. They even featured me on the App Store in a way. So if you go onto your App Store, like on your phone, and you go to download X, or if you want to call Twitter, whatever, they have preview screenshots of the app. And when you look at those screenshots, you can actually see one of them will have a picture of me on the list of people, like I guess getting into like a chat room or something, and it'll say like there's a picture of me and it says my account name Epyon. So that's super cool. I'm very happy for that feature. I'm very glad that they would do that for me. Awesome platform. Uh, I got paid out after my first payout. I think was like $26, which is great because I never thought I'd be making any money off doing any of this stuff. They're just my hobbies. I love hiking. I love the outdoors. I love nature. I love wildlife. Doing pictures and photos of wildlife was just something I love doing. I put them up on the internet to share with people because I just think people might want to see it. A lot of people never believed the stories of the stuff I saw, so I started recording it. And super cool now to start being like, I don't want to say reimbursed, but making like a little bit of money off of it. It's awesome. But anyway, I want to talk to you all about a pretty bad grizzly bear attack that happened in Banff National Park, or just outside of it. So I don't know if I really want to get into the big details of this, but there was a couple in their 60s. They were experienced, outdoors people, very knowledgeable, very educated, very experienced. Like I've said. They were hiking, out in the mountains. They had all the kind of stuff that you should have. They're very, according to like the articles I've read, they had the bear spray, they had this stuff, they had their food, put up in a tree, et cetera, et cetera. So a couple and their dog were mauled. This is a terrible thing that happens. Like it's a massive loss. I hate it for two reasons. One, the loss of human life is always tragic. It's kind of hard to, visualize it, but just think of it as being like, maybe those are your parents or your grandparents. You'd be heartbroken. You'd be distraught. And it's somebody else's grandparents or parents, right? So think of it that way. It's tragic. And then wildlife coming into conflict with humans is also something that bothers me because obviously it like people will put more of a negative stereotype on bears, and I'm not saying that bear should be protected. No, it should my opinion is once a bear has shown aggression towards people and beyond aggression from like a charge or like a defensive type of thing to an actual like mauling, it's basically our responsibility to destroy that animal. And I know I have a lot of people that listen to me that are advocates strongly for the preservation of wildlife, and I understand that too. But we share spaces with these animals. And when we go hiking, we go outdoors, we're going into their territory, and there has to be some sort of balance between that. So there's responsibility. I'm not saying these people were responsible, but there's a responsibility on our part to know a bear will be a bear. Okay? And they're unpredictable. If there's one thing you want to predict about a bear, it's that they are unpredictable, which means always go to the side of caution. Never be like, oh, I'm gonna get close to it. I'm gonna take a picture. I'm gonna feed it. Like, don't do any of that crap. That is, I can go on into a big diatribe right now about how irresponsible that is. One, you don't want wildlife to be conditioned to be comfortable, especially a predator, an apex predator, around people. If it feels comfortable enough to be close to you, it's going to be conditioned eventually to be close to everybody. And not everybody is well educated or, deals with wildlife appropriately. So you're kind of setting up other people for failure by conditioning a bear to go close to people. You further that even more when you feed it. So when you feed it, you're conditioning that bear to not only go near people, but to anticipate food from people or even seek people out in order to get food. Now, that's super dangerous because you never know how people are going to react. People could see a bear and run the other way. That could trigger an instinct in the bear for pursuit and kill because now they think that's prey, and now you have a major mauling on your hands. And it's all because it initiated from a bear just being too familiar with people and too friendly, and then the unpredictable mind snap happens where it's like, oh yeah, that's food, it's running, I'm a bear, I'm a predator, and it goes into kill mode. So you just want to appreciate nature. You want to respect nature from a reasonable distance. You don't want to get up close and personal. You don't want to take the photographs with it, especially with a cell phone. If you're going to take pictures, get the super long lenses, get all that kind of stuff. Do it appropriately. Do it safely. So back to the story. Ultimately, the bear was terminated. It destroyed, so I guess the officials got an emergency text message that could pinpoint the location of where it came from. They were able to go out, find them. It was 1 a.m. in the morning when they found them. The helicopter, because of the weather, wasn't able to go out there. But on foot, they made the trip through night. So good on those guys for really doing that to try to get out there and save these people, regardless of the time of day, whatever. And putting themselves at risk to some degree. I mean, they were armed, so they're basically the most dominant thing out there at that point, and they're their group. Sorry, pardon me. I'm just gonna take a sip of water. So they get out there. They find the couple deceased. They also had a dog with them. The dog was also deceased. Super sad. And no one can know what happened out there. There's, obviously the places probably suggest a struggle, some sort of crime scene. Reportedly, they were in their socks, not with shoes on, so kind of suggests that they were in their tent at the time. Maybe the bear approached the tent. Who knows? You don't want to speculate on these things because the moment you start speculating is you can kind of engineer a story that may not be true and then sort of cascades into a ripple effect of what people should do. They had their dog with them. I don't want to speculate, but I've seen dogs not deal with wildlife very well, especially when they're off leash. So I'm not saying that happened. I don't know if that happened. Who knows? Maybe the bear attacked the people first. The dog tried to help. Maybe vice versa. We won't know. We can never know. But we're going to talk about it anyway, just because I want to help people while they're outdoors. You generally want to always have your dog on a leash. I know you're thinking, oh, I'm in the vast, wide outdoors. There's no better place to have my dog off a leash than right here when there's no one around. There's no other dogs. Maybe you have a dog that has issue with people or other dogs. So you're thinking, if I'm isolated out I can really let them run. Which is true to a degree, and you might have a field or something that might be an appropriate place to do it with a low likelihood of having a wildlife encounter. Sure. But there's also times where you're going to come into conflict with wildlife, and it can be anything from a bear to an elk to a deer. And depending on the time of season, depending on the types of animals that are in that herd, maybe they have like baby calves with them, and your dog decides to chase it like a squirrel. Well, a good kick from like a large elk, or even like a medium sized elk, even a deer, like a deer can easily gut a dog with its antlers. Like it just goes up under its soft underbelly. You ever pet a dog's belly? You know it's got a soft portion under there. One of the horns, sometimes they're sharp. Most of the time they're sharp. They're made for fighting wolves, defending off against wolves and coyotes. They hook under there, they pierce it, and all of a sudden your guts, the dog's intestines are hanging out. Um, or even like simpler to that is like a good kick from one of them could easily break a dog's spine, leg, injure it. Like, so they're not something to be like. The, and people are like, oh, my dog's a big dog. It's this and that. It's like, okay, sure, but you know what's bigger than a dog? A wolf. And you know what these things fight? They fight wolves. Like that's the comparison you need to make. So you got to be very, cautious of like how well trained your dog is. You have to know how it is around these animals to some extent too. Like, have you been out hiking before with your dog? Preferably, maybe the first few times it's on a leash. You can gauge your dog's behavior. How it's when it sees it. Does it go, "Oh, I want to chase that," or does it go, "Does it listen to you? Does it stay with you?" Like, I don't know. But anyway, most of the laws in the parks will say keep your dog leashed at all times. That's a law. It's a law for the reason. Follow the laws of the parks. If you're in the back country and there is no real laws there or whatever, I would suggest following the parks rules because the parks rules exist for a reason, and then just sort of educating yourself on them. That's what I do with photography and videography is I go for whatever the laws are. I read them. I try to rationalize them in my head. Why does this law exist? And then I apply that to my day-to-day kind of like conduct and like ethics and etiquette when I'm doing videography or photography. I see a lot of unethical photography and videos on like Instagram and stuff like that. And I'm not the type of person to chime in and comment and this and that and da 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 da. But I do look at it and I'm like, I won't follow them. I'll be like, no, like, dude, like, you're doing this for the views and for like whatever, which I understand, like getting into like social media and stuff and posting that stuff on there. But you can't sell your soul for it in a way. Then that's the way I look at it. Is like, okay, you can get a good shot of a bear, but do you want to put yourself at risk? Do you want to put the bear at risk? Like even when you engage a bear, and let's say it notices you and it triggers the fight or flight, reaction in them. Even if it's the flight, it running away from you is going to burn a certain amount of calories in that bear that it could be better used for like hibernation or for defending itself against other bears or whatever, like, or hunting or pursuing other things. You're needlessly interjecting yourself into like the natural balance of that biome or that habitat, that ecosystem. Even though we are a part of nature as humans, like obviously we don't live out there on a day-to-day basis, so you don't really need to be negatively impacting the natural order of that ecosystem. So I always say, get yourself a super zoom camera or video camera, get yourself the telescopic lenses, empower yourself to be, ethical and responsible in photography and videography. I've kind of gone on a tangent here, but yeah, back to the bear attack. For me personally, I stop hiking typically at the end of September, especially in the mountains, depending on where. If it's like a highly traversed area, there's a lot of like, maintenance for the area and it's like touristy and whatever. If it's the more touristy a place is, the more frequent people will be there, the less likely you're going to run into wildlife. It's not impossible, but it is less likely because wildlife tends to avoid human interaction. Plus, just the way they kind of like maintain the lands around there is they sort of like, I think they kind of shoo them away, like, get out of here, nah. So, but typically, because of the weather and how cold it starts to get around the end of September, especially because that's the end of rut, You won't get any more like rut videos or footage or pictures of like, deer or elk bugling, or like, them fighting each other for dominance. I typically end my hiking around the end of September. October kind of starts to get cold. The fall is pretty much over. Like, all the leaves have fallen. It's not as pretty to look at. It's not picturesque. There's a whole lot less reasons to kind of go out there besides just being less people. It's like, oh, finally, there's less people. It's a little bit colder, but I'll just wear a jacket and do this hike. And I can appreciate that, because sometimes doing a hike with a lot of people, or there's more people than usual, can be annoying, especially if you're going out to the mountains to, get away from everyone, have your solitude. And it's kind of like, oh, there's so much nicer with less people. I appreciate that. I've been there. I've done that before. But typically, I stop around this time. And the reason I stop around this time is because this is when bears start to get hungrier, because they're getting ready to go into hibernation for the winter. And when there's not necessarily data to support this correlation, so I just want to say that before I go into this. But you can reasonably expect that if a bear is older and it's lousier at hunting, that it may become more desperate for food. And if it's gotten colder and there's been frost, there will be, berries will be gone. Dandelions are gone. All this stuff, the roots they forage for, they'll become more and more scarce. If there's a lot of bears in the area and they're all competing for these food sources, it becomes even worse. So I don't even think in this scenario the bear even thought the people were food, and maybe they were. So the bear was found close to the site. It was acting negative or aggressive towards the people that came to like rescue the people. It was destroyed ultimately, and then when they assessed the corpse of the animal, they determined that was the one that attacked them. So it's fair to say that I have seen bears stay near kills that they're sort of cached. Like, so animals like cougars will cache a kill. They'll bury it sort of like under like foliage and stuff, and they'll stick around it and they'll kind of guard it. I've seen bears with kills before. I've got some videos online. They tend to stay nearby. Sometimes they'll kind of wander away, and then coyotes will come and start kind of taking their slice of the pie from it. But quickly, bears will return back to the kill. I don't know if the people were maybe they were considered like a cached kill for the bear or not. Maybe it was just like an aggressive defensive thing. It's weird because it says that wouldn't be cubbing season for the bear either. Like in the fall, that's something that happens in the springtime, which is also something to be aware about. So I would just look at it as like bears get hungrier closer to winter because they gotta get fat and they gotta bulk up for winter, the hibernation or whatever it is they do. That would be also another so you tend to see less bears in the winter, but if they sucked at getting food because they're less and less effective as a hunter because they're getting older and they're getting beat out on the competition, I would say early winter as well is also a dangerous time to be out hiking or be out in the wild, and you could incur that. And even late winter, because some of them could be coming out of hibernation early and they didn't get enough to eat, and now they're like hungry and starving, and there's nothing really around because it's winter. It's very hard to find food or scavenge for food. So, and then right after winter, you get early spring into like early summer. It's like cubbing season, so you also have to be very cautious about that. They'll defend their cubs. So generally the best time to hike is mid to late summer, which is great for weather and stuff for us. So it's like mutually benefiting, but just be cautious of bears. The bear spray, keep that on you. It helps, but like, I'll give you a frame of reference for bear spray. So you can go online on YouTube and you can look at like military training videos or like police academy training videos, and it shows them getting like tasered or pepper sprayed or what have you. Okay, well, in those pepper spray videos I've seen online on YouTube, you see these people fight through the pepper spray to like, they do like combat and stuff. They do obstacle courses, all this kind of crazy stuff. So if a person can be motivated enough to overcome the pepper spray, then it stands to reason that a bear, if motivated enough, could also overcome bear spray. I believe. Now you get it in its eyes and blind it. I've seen people overcome it and open their eyes. So I don't know how much of that is a biological incapacitation or if it's just dependent on how motivated you become to overcome it. And if a bear is hungry enough and it has that hunger motivation or that fear motivation or that defensive motivation, it's probably going to be able to overcome it. You can hope that it's powerful enough to like subdue its senses, like you get it in its nose and eyes and then it's not able to really detect you. But what if it only buys you a few minutes and it's able to overcome it after, a short period of time, because it doesn't last forever, right? Most people, they'll get rid of the effects of pepper spray, I want to say an hour, 2 hours, like within 3 hours, which seems like a long time. But, what is a bear's ability to do that? We don't know. I'm going to think it's maybe a lot more, especially if like adrenaline's pumping to help kind of like, get rid of those like ailments that kind of help its body overcome it. So I know you keep the bear spray. They say music being loud so you don't sneak up on it. So that's like another thing you want to be conscious of is mountain bikers and biking. The sound of a bike going down a path isn't familiar to a bear, so it won't really necessarily know to avoid it as it would like people talking, playing music, listening to like a podcast during a hike. A bear can hear all these things. It can hear your footsteps. Generally speaking, not always though. They're unpredictable. They'll tend to avoid you. They'll be like, oh, there's people coming, leave. If you're on a bike, that's silent. It's essentially silent to them, and the sounds it does make, I don't think bears really register it as being like something to be concerned about. So I think a lot of the times people on bikes will inadvertently sneak up on bears, surprise them, scare them, and I think attacks can happen that way. So that's something else to be conscious of while hiking if you decide to bike. And the positioning of a bike actually more, I think, it's more similar to how its prey looks, right? So it's typically a bear's prey. It's a quadruped. It's a four-legged animal. It has like a back, the bike shape more resembles the shape of its prey as a quadruped. I can't even speak. A quadruped than you do walking or hiking as a bipedal. And typically bipedals aren't its natural prey. It doesn't really go after bipeds. There isn't any bipeds as far as I know out there. So that's another thing to be conscious of is you start to kind of more resemble the shapes it looks for when it's hunting, when you're on a bike. What else can I say? Just like bear safety. So in the springtime, same deal. Cubbing season. Generally, you're going to want to stay away. Yeah, baby bears are cute. They're clumsy, they're playful, they're all these little things. They're like little devils. If you get the opportunity to see them from like a very safe distance and you got like your binoculars and you got your telescopes and stuff, or telescopic lenses for cameras, maybe you happen to get lucky and drive by in a car, stay in your vehicle, try to stay far away as possible. Obviously, you don't want to scare the bear or its cubs because then you're wasting their energy and calories that it could use in its day-to-day life and surviving in the wild. So, and you always want to know what the laws are. Like if it says no stopping, there's no stopping signs. You see that occasionally because, they've determined, this area is something where, a certain species is frequenting, and we've had some issues with people stopping here and the animals engaging with people. Respect the signs, don't stop there. Obviously it's for a reason, right? And it's not to like be a jerk or be like we don't want anyone having fun or experiencing the outdoors. We just want to preserve the outdoors and we want to preserve these animals, and we don't want these negative interactions happening between animals and people because ultimately it leads to the destruction of an animal if it gets too bad. And no one feels good about that, right? But it's almost like it's a necessary thing that has to happen. We want the preservation of the species, but we also want the preservation of human life. And we have to find a balance with that. And that balance is animals with a tendency to attack people or an inclination towards humans to like, want to fight them or be aggressive towards them. If you allow those animals and behaviors to, continue on, like let's say they teach that to their offspring or whatever, then you'll have a large segment of the population of that wildlife being considering humans prey or food source. And that's not how you find balance with wildlife, and that's not how you find balance with nature. Unfortunately, I mean, we could leave nature to its devices, but then it wouldn't be able to be enjoyed or occupied by people in any way, shape, or form. And now we get into like a big ethical debate because there are people on both sides that say no, nature should be nature, left alone, isolated, walled garden, leave it alone. And there's people that's like, I should be able to take calculated risks with my own life, and I should be able to have the freedom to kind of enjoy the wild and take the risks I feel are safe and necessary. I see both sides of that argument. I'm kind of a fence sitter on this sometimes because it's like, yeah, I do want the preservation of species and this and that, but I mean, I don't want to spend all day locked inside a house, inside a city or something, right? So it's all about being responsible, and we owe it to ourselves, our fellow, our neighbors who may go outside. We owe it to the species we love and the wildlife we enjoy to be respectful of them. And being respectful of them means give them their space. It means acknowledging them for what they are. Apex predators, they're a beast. They're a beast. You're not Snow White. You're not, oh look, I have a magical connection with this animal. It's not going to attack me. I have a kinship with her. You got to get that nonsense out of your head when you're dealing with this, because you're just adding to the problem. You're not creating a solution. Social media obviously has had its negative impacts on wildlife and its interactions, and there's some pages out there that focus on the negative interactions of people and wildlife, and I don't know, like sometimes I like those pages because they're good at showing people, hey, this isn't safe, don't do this, don't act like this, don't behave like this. But on the other part of it, it's like, are people intentionally recording this stuff or creating these scenarios for these views? And that becomes sort of like that weird negative twist of social media. It's like the duality of it. Great, good, but also, a lot of bad can come from it as well. All right. I think that's enough of the serious tone. I think I got my message across. I don't know what else more I can say about it. Just, my thoughts are with the victims of that, and, hope it doesn't happen ever again. But in other news, there's been an echidna that was once thought dead to be extinct that has been rediscovered in Australia, or maybe it was New Zealand. I don't know. Let me give a look about this real quick. Let's see. Echidna. Echidna? I don't even know how to spell it. Echidna found to be alive. Do I have a loud keyboard? Oh, yes. Here we go. An expedition to Indonesia led by Oxford University researchers recorded 4 3-second clips of Attenborough's long-beaked echidna, a spiky furry with a beak. Echidnas have been called living fossils. They are thought to have emerged about 200 million years ago when dinosaurs roamed Earth. Oh, that's pretty cool. So anyway, echidnas, I'm pretty sure, are marsupials. They lay eggs. Something you kind of find in Australia, but I guess this one was found in what did I say it was? Indonesia. Anyway, so this specific type of echidna, it was thought to be extinct. They thought it had, died out years and years and years ago, which now they have found to still be alive and kicking, which is pretty cool. So It's not extinct, which I guess means it's a Lazarus species. And what a Lazarus species is a species once thought to be extinct, but is not actually extinct and is still alive. I mean, there were other echidnas still alive, so I don't know if it quite meets that qualification, but this subspecies, I suppose, was thought to be dead. So that's cool. It's good that, this thing isn't extinct and it can still thrive. And hopefully now maybe they can focus efforts on ensuring its continuation as a species survives. So that's some good news, everyone. The echidna's still around. The Attenborough's long-beaked echidna still kicking. So, and it was it's found in the Cyclops Mountains, which is a pretty cool name. That's a pretty cool place to find a species once thought to be, or a subspecies once thought to be extinct. In the Cyclops Mountains, the long-beaked echidna still thrives. So that's some good news. Thought I'd share that as well with some of the, sadder, bad news. But I really felt like kind of doing like a public service announcement on educating yourselves on the bears. Seeing an attack like that, it's bad for everyone. It's bad for, it's bad for people. It's bad for wildlife when we come in conflict with them. And it's not the people's fault. They did, from everything I've read, they did everything reasonable and responsible enough. It's just, this is why we enjoy it. This is the duality of the truth about it. This is part of the reason why we enjoy the outdoors. Because there's a risk involved with it. Whether you're hiking, there's always a chance of like a boulder coming crashing down, falling into a fissure, falling off a cliff, tripping, falling, coming into contact with wild animals. It's risky, but that risk, I want to say calculated risk, which is manageable, kind of does in a way make you feel more alive. It's sort of like the closer you get to death, the more alive you feel. And I think that's truly the case for like adrenaline junkies who jump out of airplanes, parachute, all that kind of stuff. People that go like bungee jumping. It's just sad when it's no longer like I don't want to say it's a game, but it's like when the reality of the potential happens. But I don't know. At least I always feel alive when I'm outdoors. I always feel like I'm living my best life. When I can see like a vast landscape from a mountaintop, and it took me a few hours to get up there, and it was like quite an effort, quite hard work, and it paid off. There's nothing more I love more. Like I love seeing the marmots while you're climbing, the bighorn sheep, just seeing like how wild and like the natural beauty of the world. And every now and then, you meet like-minded people and similar people from like all over, and I've met some really cool people. I've even had them on this podcast, the people I've met out hiking, and I don't regret any of that. And I'm really grateful that I've never had a negative experience with wildlife, and I hope I never do. And I just hope everyone out here is, that's listening right now is responsible. They don't fall to the temptations of social media views. And I'm not saying that these people did that. I don't think they did that at all. I think from everything I've read and from the articles I've seen, is most people have concluded wrong place, wrong time. And it's just that tragic, collision of what can happen. Like a boulder randomly coming down a mountain because that's the day the mountain decided today's the day I'm going to shave this rock off my surface, and coming and like smashing you in the head or crushing you is a very unlikely circumstance to happen. And I'll say that's probably the same amount of likelihood that happened with these people who are very seasoned, very experienced. It's just the random acts of nature can happen. You can be struck by lightning. They're sinking. There's quicksand like that. Probably can't kill you necessarily, but if you don't know what you're doing, it probably could. You can drown. There's like You could be in a river, all of a sudden like a surge flood comes through. There could be like a landslide. You could be on a hike, and all of a sudden the land decides today's the day it gives. If you're in the winter time, there could be an avalanche. Random acts of nature happen, and they're infrequent and they're few and far between, but they're not impossible. So always be prepared, always be ready. I don't know. I just hope everyone's safe out there. I hope everyone gives consideration to multiple different types of possibilities that can happen. I hope everyone's reasonably respectful towards wildlife and these creatures. Yeah, I think that's it. That's all I got to say. So hope everyone enjoyed this podcast. Hope everyone jumps on X and starts following me on X. I'm going to start doing some live streaming on there. I think I purchased some equipment. It's probably going to show up this today or within the next week. And we'll see what kind of content I start to put out. At some point, there will be exclusive subscriber-only content on X, which I will try to keep as... If it's going to be exclusive content, that means I'm going to have to do more work, as in make more content. And generally, I like to have most of my content free just for people to enjoy and watch. So when it's subscriber-based on X, it means you would have to pay to see it. And if you're going to pay to see it, I feel like it's only fair to keep the price as low as possible. So I imagine I would only charge $1. But even that I'm on the fence about. And I feel like it would have to be substantially good content. And it'd probably be more X focused, more X based than anything else. I don't think I would ever gatekeep any kind of animal footage. I could see myself doing like remixes or like redone versions of some of my wildlife footage, where maybe I have like a different commentary on it. And that would be up to you guys to decide if that's worth purchasing or not, which I doubt it would be. I think generally I might have like live streams on there. That would be subscriber only, maybe. I probably shouldn't even do the subscriber thing. I've talked myself out of it on here. I don't even know what type of content really I could do that could be exclusive. It's just, the only thing I can really think of is remix versions of my videos, which, only if you were like a super fan, you'd really want to see, which maybe is probably the appropriate thing for it then. And then I want a live stream on X, but I don't think making it exclusive would be a good thing at all. Maybe like an after, like let's say I do a podcast like this one. I have like an after podcast where it's like exclusive to X, and it's like a shorter version. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Hope everyone has a beautiful week, and hopefully I'm back to doing this more regularly, as I knew now. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Now I have a new studio. I had been waiting for my home to be built for over a year. I'm now in my home. I now have something of a studio, but if you listen to this podcast, you probably realize there's maybe a bit of an echo. So I don't think I have the best room for it, but maybe I have to get some sound or audio dampening stuff around the walls. We'll figure it out. Anyway, cheers everybody. It's been a blast.